Good evening. To those of you that are watching this town hall forum via live feed, we're happy to have you here. Also, I want to say a special thanks to the 4 county commissioner candidates who have agreed to participate in tonight's forum. Allow me to introduce you to them at this time. First of all, the 2 candidates for District 5, Mark Willems.
Hello.
And John Fahey.
Good evening.
And the 2 candidates for District 3, Matt Uderman.
Hello.
And Randy Maluchnik.
Hey, folks.
I'm Denny Laufenburger, and I will serve as moderator for tonight's forum. Joining me here at the officials table, former Carver County Sheriff Jim Olson, who will act as time enforcement officer for this event. In just a few moments, we'll begin our forum with opening statements from each of the candidates, in a sequence determined earlier this month. After the opening statements, I will ask a series of questions taken from input by email from more than 24 residents of Carver County. Now, we won't be able to ask every question that was submitted, but those of you that are watching and did submit questions, you may hear yours asked this evening. The sequence of responses for tonight's forum has been provided to the candidates ahead of time, but the questions have not. To remove any unintended partiality on the questions, I'll ask the candidate who is to answer first to choose a number 1 through 9, and that is the question that I will ask during that round. Following the questions, we'll hear closing statements from each candidate. At the conclusion, the forum will be posted as a recording on the same website at which you are watching this live feed. Just a reminder to the candidates, you will have 1.5 minutes for your statements and for your answers. And Sheriff Olson has signs reflecting 30 seconds remaining, 15 seconds remaining, and then a stop. Please respect the other candidates by responding within your allotted time. So with that, let's begin with our opening statements, starting with Randy Maluchnik.
Thank you, Denny. I want to thank you for sitting in this time around, since the League of Women Voters weren't able to do that, and I sure do miss them, but I know that you'll meet the challenge. This commissioner race in the 3rd District is simply a matter of experience. Does experience matter when we're entering into an uncharted waters like we did in 2008 during the Great Recession? When I say we, I mean all of Carver County rose and met the challenge then, and together we're going to do it again this time. There's no secret the Maluchnik family has chosen the good work of a public servant for our vocation. Both my wife and I, my wife is a public school teacher for 30 years. We learned, both of us at a young age, that public service is a noble profession. It means commitment to the people that you serve. I have been a public servant since leaving active military duty. Before entering active duty, I was successful in the private sector, running or owning several businesses where I made payroll, paid business taxes, and did what people usually do when they run a Main Street business venture. Thank you. That concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Maluchnik. Next up, Matt Uderman.
You. I'm running for you. As our signs, posts, chat with Matt events, and interaction support, this election isn't about me, it's about you. You, the collective stakeholders and taxpayers saddled with the highest taxes in the state. You, the business owner frustrated with unnecessary layers of government. You, the 700-plus county employees who may not feel valued, heard, or empowered. You, the 11% of Carver County living below the double poverty line, barely making ends meet, who doesn't much care about the healthiest or happiest or most affluent county because that isn't your reality. You, the 1 in 5 suffering from mental health or mental illness. You, the 40% of parents with school-aged children navigating childcare, schools, and distance learning. You, the 35% of residents new to Carver County in the last 15 years. You, the folks who believe we need fresh ideas against a backdrop of an average of 25-plus years in politics of the current commission. You, the underrepresented or unrepresented stakeholders of Carver County. Our You Matter message is grounded in 3 pillars. Number 1, people matter. We believe people should come before politics. Number 2, community matters. We believe you should be able to live here a lifetime if you so choose. And 3, finances matter. We believe smart dimes beat dumb dollars. And We need to do a smarter job of spending your tax dollars. There's no shortage of partisan politics, division, smears, myth, truths, but there is a shortage of next generation leaders needed to lead our future of our county. Leaders stand up, they show up, and they speak up, not just the 2 months before an election. The current county board has been unchanged since 2006. If you believe this election should be about you, and if you believe a balanced board is a better board, join in voting for Matt for Carver County Commission, District 3.
Thank you. Commissioner role and responsibility. Someone has suggested that the role of county commissioner is not well understood by the public in Carver County. Can each of you describe what you believe the role of a county commissioner is and how you are prepared and equipped to perform that role of leadership in your district for the next 4 years? You have a minute and a half, each of you.
It amazes me when I go out and meet with people in the community, whether it's our Chat with Matt conversations or whether it's door to door, that fewer than 3% of people know what a commission does, and fewer than 3% of people actually know who their current commissioner is. So I explain to people a roughly $170 million budget, about half of that is made up through your property taxes. And if we take that $170 million, about a third of it's physical infrastructure, things like roads and bridges, clearing them, maintaining them, and building them. But a third of it's probably close to the social infrastructure, things like food stamps, things like mental health and other things that are a little bit softer that we put on the social infrastructure. And about a third of it's administration. If you call 911 and you get dispatched, that's Carver County. The operation of the library, the operation of the elections, the operation of your taxes if you want to challenge it or get a variance. And so in response to that, what does a commissioner do? It aligns with my 3 pillars. 1, people matter. I think our role is to empower our staff and then get out of their way. In empowering those staff members, I think that we need to cast clear vision and have clear values and have high standards. Number 2 is community matters. I think that the relationships are absolutely pinnacle. You'll see me at City of Victoria meetings, City of Chaska meetings, City Council meetings, as well as District 112 meetings and other meetings, because I think those relationships, along with relationship with not-for-profits, churches, individuals, and civic organizations are pertinent. And the third thing I talk about is finance matters. We've got to do a smarter job of spending your taxes, and I think that includes focusing on a business population, because about every dollar spent by an individual, a business will carry $3.5 worth from a tax standpoint. So people matter,
Thank you,
community matter, and finance
Mr.
matters.
Witterman. Next, Mr. Maluchnik, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it. Thank you, Denny. First of all, you're right. Not many people know what a county commissioner does. It's kind of a ghost government, if you will. I had one person describe it one time as you start finding out what a commissioner does, it's like peeling away an onion. But the first and foremost duty of a locally elected public official is public safety. So you got to make sure that the roads are fine and maintained and well kept and the bridges are there. And you have to make sure that the emergency services and our FEMA folks are there to make sure that those emergencies do not turn into disasters. And you have to be, because you're an agent of the federal and state government, great partners they can be, sometimes troublesome partners, but you have to ensure that their programs are administered or delivered properly, effectively, in the best service model delivery system possible. And what I like to say is I've always been successful in public service, and first in the military, then serving with Congressman Mingy as the military and veterans liaison, taking care of our men and women in the service and their families. Then at the Veterans Administration as a veteran service officer, then as a city council member in the city of Chaska, and now as your county commissioner. And that'll complete my my answer. Denny, thank you.
All right, thank you. Question 2, Mr. Willems, you are the first responder, so choose a number 2 through 9.
4.
4. During the past few months, we have heard an increasing call from all segments of our society that decades and centuries of systemic racism and social injustice must end. What role does Carver County have in addressing the issues of racial and ethnic disparity in law enforcement, housing, employment, education, and other areas that contribute to quality of life? And what is your personal role in this action? Mr. Maluchnik, would you like me to repeat the question?
I want to make sure I get all the criteria. So, Denny, can I get it again? So I have housing, employment, law enforcement. What's the other one?
Well, I'm going to read the whole question.
Go ahead, please.
During the past few months, we have heard an increasing call from all segments of our society that decades and centuries of systemic racism and social injustice must end. What role does Carver County have in addressing the issues of racial and ethnic disparity in law enforcement, housing, employment, education, and other areas that contribute to quality of life? And what is your personal role in this action?
All right, thank you very much. And many of those categories that you mentioned, I do have a personal investment. First of all, they're absolutely right. This has got to stop. I remember doing protesting in the 1970s, and I thought this was all going to be over by now, but it seems like it's worse than it was then. And first of all, with housing, we need more low-income and affordable housing, and we've got to promote and do that. People can't go out and get a job unless they have housing. And we used to do that the other way around, and we found out that doesn't work. Second of all, in employment, we have to enhance, and I've been a champion of that, the Career Force Center. And we've been reaching out to folks of all backgrounds and trying to get them matched up with the employers, which seems to be a problem, a recent problem here in Carver County, that we just can't seem to get the right people matched up with the right employers. And with law enforcement, I supported the sheriff, and the sheriff here knows, and other sheriffs, that we, the training for in equity and treating people right, the de-escalation that needs to go on, that's important. And education, of course, we want to make sure that the kids all have nourishment. So with a SHIP program and working with the school district and with their health councils in each little school, we're working to make sure that they have good health, good nutrition. That helps them learn, and that can hopefully close the learning gap. So thank you. That's my answer.
All right, thank you. Mr. Udeman, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. But I don't know if it's possible or not, but Randy has the distinct privilege of having been our commissioner for 14 years. And I guess I didn't hear how you've actually done anything. To
Address your answer to the cameras, Matt, please.
Yeah, I haven't, I would like to lend my time back to Randy because I didn't hear how he's done anything in the last 14 years to address those things.
Okay, is that the conclusion of your answer?
No, I'll just lend my time. If there's any time left, I'll answer it.
Okay, did you have anything else that you wanted to say, Mr. Maluchnik?
Well, if you want to talk about the increase in affordable housing that we've had in Carver County, it's doubled or tripled since I become a commissioner. The affordable housing, the low-income housing has increased. The veterans transitional housing we just developed last year, and we made that happen. You want to know more about the housing?
No, I guess my question is, what have you done? I've heard a lot of we.
Mr. Udeman, I would ask that you respond to this question, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we don't want to go with that?
No, respond to this
Kind of
question.
criteria, he doesn't like to play by the rules, Denny.
Enough. Respond to the question with your time remaining.
You bet. So I think it's a values issue. I think it's about human rights and dignity, and I think it's not just a race issue. I think it's people living in the shadows that might be disabled. I think it's people that are older that are caught in the shadows, and I think that systematic racism does exist. And I ask the question is why are we talking about it now when we have a commissioner that's been here for 14 years? Why is the last conversation that I had with the head of HR for Carver County say that there's only 1% person at the manager level above that's a person of color? We have got to focus on these areas. We have to be in proximity with people. We have to create a culture that lends itself to being able to solve these problems. We have to address the 250 homeless people, and I think we do that with not-for-profit, civic organizations, places of faith, individuals, and foundations to accelerate the work that has not been done at the county to date.
Thank you, Mr. Udeman. Question number 3, Mr. Udeman, this is your choice.
We're going to go with 2 because we've got 2 little kids at home.
This is transportation. In Carver County, as everywhere in Minnesota, transportation infrastructure is vital to commerce, education, and connecting our resources, people, goods, and services to our surrounding region. While the county has done reasonably well to maintain county roads, the federal and state seem to be behind in funding their responsibilities. The question, 2 parts. Should Carver County use local tax dollars to fund federal and state highways like 212, 41, and 5? Why or why not? And are there any county road projects that you would advocate for or against if you were commissioner? Mr. Uderman.
Yeah, I think the value is, it's a values question, is do we value transportation? What's the point of that transportation? The transportation is not only for our residents, but it's also to attract new businesses to this area. And we've got a gem of a road that Bob Lindell and Carol Molnow and dozens of other people helped create. And having 212 is supposed to be a commerce artery, but we've not seen that commerce develop. We are the fastest growing county in the state, and we've seen commerce grow, but not to the degree that we should with 212. We have been promised an extension to 212, a 4-lane, and we have not yet to realize that. We've seen building congestion on Highway 5 that has not been addressed. And I think that part of the solution with that is we need to work closely with municipalities, the cities, because there is funding. Federal dollars is pushing down to state. State is pushing to county, and county is pushing to cities. So there does need to be partnerships. But how far can we push it down? Because it's the same tax dollar, okay? It's the same people within Carver County that are going to be paying for these roads. So we need to have better relationships, and we have to push back. As far as county road projects, I mentioned a few of those already. 11 and 10 will be the arteries for the growth within Victoria. Most people don't know this, but Victoria in the next 50 years will be the largest city in the county. And it's troublesome because Victoria has relatively no commerce. And so we have got to be focused on that 11. We have to be in partnership with the farmers and bridge the urban to the rural so that we can accelerate these for sizable business growth and planned business growth.
Thank you. Mr. Maluchnik, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it. Thank you, Denny.
All right.
Absolutely, we have to put local money in. It's called feeder money, and the locals have to put in it, or you don't get the attention of the state or the feds. As far as 41, I was very proud to work with legislation and move it forward with lobbyists and folks, actually some folks in this panel here, to get TED grants, which actually built the improvements on 41 this year. If we hadn't had, or last year, if we hadn't had the TED program, which is Transportation Economic Development Program, those roads would not be improved. You'll be hearing probably next month that we're going to turn the shovel on 212 beginning next season, so that'll be spring of 2021. The reason we're not announcing right now is we're waiting in case there's a rumor of a special bonding session. We have a bill in that would take care of some of the phase one. Phase one, of course, would be Carver to Cologne. So that's already in the hopper, ready to go. Mr. Lindahl did a lot of work. Carol Molno made it a little tougher because of the way she did it. I would have done it her way too, but she didn't have time to recoup with the folks, the other local elected officials in town or in the state that didn't like the way that she did that. But anyway, we managed to mend a lot of those partnerships and move on to finally getting 212 done. So that'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Property taxes. Carver County collects the highest property tax in Minnesota, levying an average of $2,992 or 1.04% of median home value every year in property taxes. The county budget, well over $150 million, and with COVID-19, we may see shortfalls during the coming year. Outside of raising taxes to meet the shortfall, what other steps or priorities would you have to narrow the gap between revenue and expenses in the coming years?
Yeah, so thank you. I think one of the things that we have to recognize is where does that leadership come from? And when I was at Best Buy, we navigated the recessionary period, and I had a $500 million budget underneath my watch. We came out of that as a stronger team with better revenues and a great position because of a couple things. Number one, we reinvested in our people. We assured the people that they were the future of this, and we asked them to tighten their belts. We asked them to come with creative solutions. We asked them to find places where there could be savings and efficiencies. So you might hear some talk about a net zero budget or things that will be proposed that it's not going to cost the taxpayer any extra. But what you won't probably hear is these little pockets called vacancy savings. You won't hear these other pockets called deferred maintenance or deferred things. It doesn't mean these things go away. It just means it looks on paper as they're not great. And so one thing I wouldn't do is not reward employees that have had to take on the burden of fewer employees and more time. I was appointed by Randy Maluchnik and the board to be the chair of the Carver County Library Board. And when I took over, I said we need to be more connected and we need to have more access. But I also said we need to recession-proof our library. So unfortunately, we can't go back in time and say recession-proof because this is one of those times where we should have been prepared for it. We're kind of caught on our heels. But the answer is through empowering your staff. The answer is to find the gaps where we can employ the good working people of the county to step forward and find these areas. It's not to give them zero raises for people that are working extra hard during this period of time. Thank you.
Mr. Maluchnik, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I'm all right. Thank you, Denny. Mr. Williams is correct. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. The good news is that as far as folks paying their first half of their property tax, the number of folks or the amount of money was about where it was at, or is traditionally at. So that's the good news, but we still don't know where we're going to be. So we've already instituted measures for next year as we begin. Many folks don't know, but the budgeting process begins in April for the next year, and we've been working on that. So we've instituted your traditional things that worked so well in 2008, and that, of course, is a soft hiring freeze. You always look at capital improvements, and do they need to be done now or not? Replacement can sometimes be delayed, and that deferred maintenance that Mr. Udeman talked about, that's probably your worst option, because what happens if you've ever run a business or a manufacturing operation, you know that deferred maintenance is going to cost you more money in the long run. So you want to try not to do that. So the action that we've already taken is that because of growth, the fantastic growth that Carver County is experiencing, is we're going to be able to raise the levy a little bit, and that's all going to be made up by growth. And then everybody else's, or the medium average home, is going to remain the same as taxes. So your taxes most likely will not go up next year. And if they do, if you're in the higher end houses, it'll only be a few dollars. So we've already taken care of those.
Thank you. Mr. Maluchnik, you get question number 5. Choose 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9.
Let's go for broke. We'll do 9.
This is regarding law enforcement. There have been several suggestions over the last few years as to how Carver County Sheriff's Office law enforcement should be adjusted, such as body cameras, ride-along mental health co-responders, changes to training, monitoring the ethnic profiling of arrests. Are there some changes that you would advocate for as county commissioner? And if so, what are they? Mr. Maluchnik?
The two things that come out, and I spent some time researching this and visiting other places across the country. Body cams is absolutely something we have to do right away. We talked about respecting people, and not only is body cams important in being able to document or show de-escalation and respect, it also protects the safety of not only the person that's being involved with the law enforcement, but it also protects law enforcement. So it's something that has to be done. Co-responders, I was the first guy. The sheriff, Don't Say Nothing, was here when I called the first meeting to talk about co-responders, and I had visited 2 different programs throughout the country that were very successful. And these folks, we've had a case recently where a co-responder talked a person down, and it could definitely be a life-threatening situation, not only for the person, but also for the law enforcement people. And so those are the 2 big things that I think we could do more with. I think the training is going about right. Sheriff Cameroon has used the right level and investing in training for equity and de-escalation and those kinds of things. And I have and will always support those efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Udeman, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah. So I think the first thing I'd say is, if there's challenges, what have we been waiting for? The county board has been unchanged since 2006. And so if there's any changes that are needed to be made, I think those things need to be evaluated. The second thing I think is we tend to have a knee-jerk response that says if somebody brings up a complaint that there's a problem. And I think we could look at the word and say Jason Kammer is doing a fantastic job as your elected official, and there may be some opportunities. And I think that when Jason and Ryan over at the city of Chaska took office, they did what anybody good in those offices would do. They took a step back, they evaluated, they talked to their people, and they made a judgment. And so I'm proud to say I've got a good working relationship with each of those gentlemen. And I'm also very well aware of what goes on from a perspective of a citizen, having taken the Citizens Sheriff Academy. It's a 16-week training course, so I'll give a little plug for it. You get a chance to see all the facets of the sheriff's office. And one example would be is if I'm from here, if you're watching, there's a door to the back. I have about this much time to cover the distance if I need to decide if I'm going to draw my weapon and or shoot my weapon. And so going through a Citizens Academy gives you an appreciation for what the sheriff's office and the cops do day in and day out. But let's not jump to the knee-jerk reaction that we're not doing these things, because I think we very much are. I also want to call out the efforts of Dr. Richard Scott in partnering with mental health and Jason Camroot in the sheriff's office, because there's a lot of things that are out there that are actually being done if we just take the chance to have the conversation. I know Jason and Richard would both welcome your conversations, and I know it's been very enlightening for me to have that information as I share with the rest of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Uterman, this is your choice, 5, 6, 7, or 8.
Let's go with 5. I came with a family of 5.
All right. In the Twin Cities 7-county metro area, 3 counties have 5 board members, and 4 counties have 7 board members. Minnesota state statute allows counties to increase board size from 5 to 7 after the population reaches 100,000. Which Carver County will most likely be after the conclusion of the 2020 census. The question is, should the county consider expanding its board? Why or why not?
I think the answer, thank you, Denny. The answer is I would actually favor considering 3 board members, 1 rural, 1 urban, and 1 at large. The reason for that is because in the last decade, your tax dollars have gone to $6.2 million worth of salaries of these commissioners. And by and large, you don't know what they do. Like I said at the opening comments, 3% of Carver County unofficially doesn't know who their commissioner is or what they do. And so my answer would be is absolutely not for 7, and even consider the thought or possibility of 3. Thank you.
Mr. Maluchnik, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I have it. Thank you, Denny. So the 100,000, if you understand or the history of the statute, was simply an arbitrated decision number pulled out of the air, and actually the folks, the downtown folks, again, had a little more influence over that number than, of course, us folks out here in the rural areas, or I should say in the outer part of the suburbs. So I couldn't be more against what my opponent suggests, going from 5 to 3, meaning that people would have less representation. I think you need to have more representation. However, moving from 5 to 7, the density doesn't warrant it. It wouldn't be a cost-effective way of doing it. And from what I can tell, people don't have a problem with the way they're being represented. My opponent talks about the same board for 14 years. Well, there's a reason for that. So the people must be satisfied with what's going on.
Thank you. This is a direct question that was submitted. I didn't change it at all. There's been a lot of talk about us having the highest taxes in the state, but from my vantage point, I see our tax dollars going toward a high quality of life in Carver County. To that end, I asked the candidates if they believe there is waste in the county budget, and if so, what exactly do they think is a waste of money? Mr. Maluchnik, would you like me to repeat this question?
No, I think I got it. Thank you, Denny. Of course, I came back a few years ago from a conference, and we talked about the LEAN program and all the things that it could do to empower the employees to come forward and help us eliminate unnecessary processes. And we talked to some of the employees, and they said, well, we do this, but we don't know why we did it. We've just done it since I've been here. Well, how long have you been here? 25 years. So, you know, we had processes that we don't need. And is there waste? Sure, there's still waste, but we've eliminated a great deal of it. But I want to talk about when people say when they talk about taxes, you know, they talk about the amount. What about the effectiveness? What about an effective tax rate? You know, you look at an effective tax rate as a percentage of the market value a homeowner is paying in property taxes. It is calculated very simply by taking the home market's value and dividing it by the tax. So we know that valuations of home, you know, went down beginning in 2009 during the Great Recession. By the way, we met that challenge. And then it ended around 2013. The rising home values and the relative modest rate of tax increases by the county has resulted in decreasing effective tax rates starting in 2014 and continuing through 2020. A more logical way to look at how effective your taxes are. The term is effective tax rate. Thank you.
I think we have to shake the stigma of being the highest tax county in the state. It doesn't help us attract new people here. It does not help us attract new businesses. A lot of the effort of candidates are spent knocking door to door or focusing on the people that live in the houses, but there's a segment that often gets missed, and that's the business owner. And I've spent a considerable amount of time asking people. Most recently, just this weekend, it's a business owner that looks over 750 employees. It's just over the border in Hennepin County. The first question I asked this person was, would you consider relocating your business to Carver County? He said, no. And then I asked, have you ever been asked that question? And he said, no. We have people that have been living in Carver County that love the amenities of the lakes. They love the parks. They love the trails. They love the outdoors. But they haven't been approached to bring their business here. And so we have to drop that stigma or we're going to lose a lot of these business owners to come here. If you ask a business owner, if you ask a senior citizen, you ask somebody raising kids today, they will not agree that high taxes are something they're willing to pay for, especially in the child rearing age. It's not the luxury that they necessarily have. In the areas where I would focus on, number one, I'd cut commissioner salaries. The last vote of 2016, led by my opponent, was to give themselves a $13,500 increase. I don't know that that was warranted, and it certainly was not something that trickled down to the frontline employees. Number two, I'd evaluate our devices and find out how many devices are sitting in a closet that aren't being used, and they're metaphors, first thing. And then finally, I would figure out a way to compare ourselves against peer counties. We are our fastest growing county, but Scott County has similar amenities. They have 5 employees for every 1,000 of population. We're sitting at 7 employees per 1,000. That needs to be evaluated. Thank you.
Development within the county is often a reason for much debate and heated discussion. Whether it is commercial or residential, development increases the taxable market base for the communities and the county. New businesses also bring new jobs and need for skilled workers. It's also likely that it reduces the land that is devoted to agriculture and farming in the county. What is your perspective on industrial and residential development that could result in a population growth by as much as 40% over the next 20 years?
I think that when you meet urban meets rural, there's a potential to be conflict. So why don't we work on these relationships upstream? If you drive down Highway 10 or Highway 11, you'll see my signs at a large number of farmers' houses. And when I have the conversations, one thing that often pops up is we don't want to be taxed out or we don't want to be assessed out. These are generational farmers that need to be respected for 150 years ago being the foundation of Carver County. And a number of these occasions, they haven't talked to their local commissioner. On a number of occasions, they feel like they haven't been heard. An example would be Marsh Lake Road, where a number of the commissioners wanted to push a 4-lane divided road through without even talking to these farmers. There's a major landowner that's on Marsh Lake Road as well that didn't even know the commissioner until I spoke with him recently and we had an interview. I don't think those are relationships that we need to take lightly because guess what? They were here before we were. And so if we can work upstream and build stronger relationships with the farming community, they're not idiots. They know exactly what's coming their way. And guess what? It's not all about money. It's about their family farm having been here and there's some heritage there. So when I have conversations, I talk about what are the 100 incremental jobs that we want to have in Carver County annually that pay $60,000 or more that's non-exportable. And I focus on that to say this is where we need to focus our energies because the development is coming and we need to be planful. We need to work with the city of Victoria, we need to work with the city of Chaska, and we need to plan that growth, articulate it, and work cohesively with the farmers that have been here way before me, way before anybody that's on the commission. Thank you.
I served 9 years on the Planning Commission. Of course, that takes care of the unincorporated part of our county. We need to let the cities do what they do. Steering all development to the cities is the right thing to do. That's where the infrastructure happens. The 1x40, again, is the way to go. We need to maintain our prime ag land. We haven't had a food problem in this country for quite a few years, but it could happen. Now we have a distribution problem because this nation doesn't invest in transportation infrastructure like it should, and we don't do it in the whole world. Got enough food to feed everybody, but we got to get it to them one way or another. So I just want to make sure that Carver County doesn't become a vast suburban wasteland. That's what I want to make sure. I think that's been my goal since the beginning. As far as honoring our farmers, I think they know that I'm there for them. I've voted with them. I would say just about every time. I don't know a case when I haven't voted for them. And we support good heritage in the farms by supporting the Peterson farm, our Norwegian heritage, and of course the Grimm farm with our German heritage. So, Carver County's been about farming, and I hope that, and I plan to keep it always to be about farming.
Now to our closing statements. First, Mr. Uderman.
Yes, I don't know that the Petersons would agree with that. It's time. It's time for new perspectives. The current board has been unchanged since 2006. What the board has in longevity, it lacks in perspective. It's time to shed the stigma of being the highest tax county in the state to help pave better outcomes for job creators, boomers, and senior citizens. It's time that the 40% of households with student-aged children are represented. It's time that we find a path for the 11% of residents living under the Dobrile poverty level to have time to make a path for the middle class. It's time our veterans not be saddled with crushing taxes. It's time for deeper partnerships and relationships based in trust. It's time we listen to what residents want and deliver solutions like growing Highway 5 congestion and promised but yet to be delivered 212 expansion. It's time for a commissioner that represents the 35% of residents new to the county in the last 15 years. It's time for a commissioner who fights harder for you, the local stakeholder, than his $13,500 raise, special interests, unions, taxpayer-paid trips to D.C., out-of-state campaigning, or $2 billion Hennepin County light rail efforts. It's time for 700-plus county employees that they have a culture of empowerment, and this culture supports a staff that mirrors our growing and changing population. It's time for results and actions, not words or surrogate smears, and not just an election cycle. It's time for a leader who shows up, stands up, and speaks up. And if you agree, use your vote in saying it's time for Matt Uterman for Carver County Commissioner, District 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maluchnik?
Thank you. I want to thank you, Denny, for stepping up and doing this, and it's much appreciated. And Sheriff Olson, it's always good to see you, and thank you for being a timekeeper. You haven't messed up one time, and I'm really kind of proud to know you, so about that. So it's about experience, folks. We need decisions that are made with verifiable data and skilled critical thinking. It's not a time to go backwards. We've got to really represent the folks the way we always have here at Carver County, traditionally. And to say that a group of people aren't representative would be pretend like, well, we just showed up one day, you know, we were 60 years old. That's not true. We all raise families on the county board, pretty successfully, I may add. But it's once again, it's important that we have working experience, proven working experience, with the ability to put ideology aside and to work to make the next two budget cycles successful. And that is in jeopardy because of COVID. But what I want to say is that I have always been a public servant who has been about the people, of the people, and for the people. It was taught to me by my grandfather, who was a public servant, a township supervisor. I respectfully ask you to vote to return me to the county board in 2021 so I can, with the help of our fine Carver County employees, keep delivering for you.
Well, that concludes our town hall forum. I would like to say, first of all, thank you to each of our candidates for agreeing to participate and participating vigorously tonight. Also, thanks to Sheriff Olson for coming out of retirement and being my time enforcement officer. Also want to say thank you to Carver County and especially to Nick Coctavi, the Assistant County Administrator, for accommodating this event at this location. And especially I want to say thanks to you watching this live town hall forum. We hope that this event has helped you as you prepare to vote for county commissioners this fall. Remember, early voting begins tomorrow in Carver County. Visit the Carver County website for instruction on early voting and absentee voting and voting on Election Day, November 3rd. Thank you and good evening.